Hello, my name is Kalea Deed, and today I will be speaking to you about my final project on the movie I Can Speak. The movie was directed by Kim Young-sok and released on September 24th of 2017. The time period is just set in modern Korea, so it's just around 2007. The cast is played by Na Moon-hee as Naok-boon, who's known as a frequent troublemaking visitor to the local public government's office, who's filed at least 8,000 civil complaints. Her younger character, Cha Soo-in, plays young Naok-boon that we get to see in flashbacks. Now we also have Lee Ji-hoon as Park Bin-jae, who is a ninth level civil servant officer that later befriends Naok-boon and teaches her English. It is also noteworthy that this film has won the prize for the Comfort Women Victim Scenario Project, which is sponsored by the Ministry of Gender Equality and Family. It's widely praised for its lively approach to the issue of comfort women, which is based generally on anger and sadness. Before we go into a synopsis, I wanted to cover some of the history so that we could have a better understanding of the context behind the movie. The Korean Empire stood until Japan's annexation of Korea in August of 1910. During the Japanese occupation, Korea was annexed by the Empire of Japan after years of war, intimidation, and political issues. The country was be considered as part of Japan until 1945. In order to establish control in Korea, the Empire of Japan also waged an all-out war against Korean culture. Here during this time period, we will also see the creation of comfort women. We'll focus more on this as it has as this is the historical background that we see referenced in the movie. Comfort women or comfort girls were women and girls forced into sexual slavery by the Imperial Japanese Army in occupied countries and territories before and during World War II. The term comfort women in Japanese literally translates to comforting or consoling women. While military brothels existed in Japanese military since 1932, it expanded widely after one of the most infamous incidents in the Imperial Japan's attempt to take over the Republic of China. On December 13th, in 1937, Japanese troops began a 6-week-long massacre that essentially destroyed the Chinese city of Nanking. Along the way, Japanese troops raped between 20,000 and 80,000 Chinese women. The mass rapes not only horrified the world, but it made the Emperor Hirohito concerned about the impact it would have on Japan's image. So he ordered the military to expand its so-called comfort stations or military brothels in an attempt to further prevent such atrocities, reduce sexual transmitted diseases, and ensure a steady and isolated group of prostitutes to satisfy Japanese soldiers' sexual appetites. Recruiting women for these brothels was literally just kidnapping or coercing them. Women were rounded up of the streets of Japanese occupied territories and convinced to travel to what they thought were either nursing units, jobs, or purchased from their parents as indentured servants. These women came from all over Southeast Asia, so it was both between Korean and Chinese women primarily. Once these women were at the brothels, they were forced to have sex with their captors under brutal and inhumane conditions. Though every woman's experience was different, their testimonies share very many similarities, particularly repeated rapes that increased before battles, agonizing physical pain, pregnancies, sexually transmitted diseases, and just horrible and bleak conditions. The resolution of the conviction of comfort women, HR 121 of the Japanese military, is an actual resolution that went in Congress in 2007. The U.S. House of Representatives approved a non-binding resolution asking Japan to formally apologize for enslaving hundreds of thousands of women in East Asia and the Pacific to serve as comfort women for the Japanese Imperial Army during World War II. The Japanese prime minister has since denied allegations for forced sexual slavery, saying that the U.S. House resolution is not based on objective facts because the women were professional prostitutes and paid for their services. He later had to issue an apology, but still never explicitly acknowledged the role the Japanese military and government played in facilitating those brothels. There was also a group of Japanese political officials that fought to get the U.S. to retract the resolution and claim that it was based on wrong information and contradicts historical fact. Now we'll jump into the synopsis of the movie. In the beginning, civil servant Park Min-jae gets transferred to a new district in Seoul. It depicts him as a young man principal who is diligent at his job, as well as responsible for how well he takes care of his little brother, and works to support him in his education. Dong Boon is an older lady who is known and feared in her neighborhood for constantly complaining about things and filing civil complaints at her district office. When she's not working at her tailor shop or filing complaints at the local ward office, she practices English for a reason not yet known. We later find out that the senior class that she wanted to attend was not at her level, and the English Academy was too fast-paced and she was kicked out. When it seemed like all was lost, she ran into Park Min-jae at a language school for English by accident, where she learned that he speaks English fluently. After much resistance from Park Min-jae, he agrees to teach her. He was convinced when he later saw how well she took care of his little brother. And eventually grew really fond of her and began to treat her as a grandmother. Towards the end, we come to learn that for one, Ok-boon wanted to learn English to reunite with her family she was separated from as a child to live in the US. Her primary reason, however, was to fulfill her friend Jung-sum's dream of testifying to the US Congress about the horrendous sexual assaults that comfort women went through during the Japanese occupation. My opinions were that it was very, very moving, especially in the sense that it was based on the struggle of comfort women and the atrocities committed against them, which is, like, of course, an extremely brutal, inhumane, and just discomforting topic. But this movie took an approach of making it more storytelling, so that we got to see that growth in a bond between student and teacher and grandmother-grandchild relationship being developed. So it had us even more moved by what she was going through. I also really like how it focused on, unlike some other movies, it focused on the aftermath of the Japanese occupation, and making the Japanese admit guilt for their crimes. Especially how it was based on her speaking in a U.S. Congress event for a public resolution, which actually took place, and it actually was done. So it's not like this movie depicts something that we would like to see happen, but instead is telling about things that are currently going on while also reflecting on the past political issues that have occurred. What I learned was that how comfort women came to be, because I wasn't aware of how they were trafficked in that way, how they were given the false hopes of receiving those jobs, and in fact they were just being taken to brothels. Nor did I know that that the Japan is still being consistent in denying the allegations held against them about having comfort women. I had no idea that even today, with all this irrefutable evidence and all of these witnesses, they're still not taking claim to that. So it's including in textbooks. Most textbooks still don't even have that right. So it was really interesting to learn about not only the past issues that went on, but the ones that are still insisted today.